G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Heff and tonight I am joined by two very special guests. Welcome to the show, Lewy and Jordy. How's it going?
Good, mate. Keen to be here and good to be here with Lewy, my mate. So I think Lewy was the one that introduced us. So
yeah, it was actually.
It's always good to be, all three of us is pretty keen to talk footy.
You always bringing people together, Lewy. What do you have to say about that?
Oh, it's just the sort of person I am.
we haven't actually heard from you for a while. What's been happening since the PodPod kind of went on hiatus? What have you been up to?
Oh, mate, probably busier than ever. It's just ramped up at work and... when one thing like that sort of dwindles a little bit, you sort of have to fill your time up with something else. So, a bit more work and a bit more responsibility there.
Absolutely. And Jordy, you've just been playing gigs and watching fantasy scores tick over?
Pretty much. And the gigs have been it's been going crazy this winter. Like I think I figured out, I don't know, DJs I think are dying maybe, and the acoustic is in at the moment. So... it's been very busy and I'm trying to watch as much footy as I can, so it's always hard to juggle the two, but loving it at the moment.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, you guys are in a league together, so I thought Lewy could just give us a bit of an update on how your league's going, how your team's going, who's the dominant team out of you two, what's the go?
Jordy's definitely got me covered. He's got a few more old boys that put up some decent, more consistent scoring week to week, whereas I've sort of skewed young since my draft, and I've got a bad habit for throwing out trades constantly and keep sort of hamstringing myself and going a little bit backwards week on week. But still in 7th place, so I reckon I might sneak into...
How many teams, sorry?
12?
12 teams,
yeah. So should play finals, touch wood.
And right. Checkers is in that one as well.
And how's he going?
I think he's 12th.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Who's the top team?
Another mate called Jordan, and I'm second. Yeah, so hopefully I can take it out. But Lewy's like, Jordy, go do some trades, mate. And I said, yeah, I'm keen to do some trades with you, but you've got no old boys that I need to top the list up. So I got to look elsewhere, and those boys aren't as active as Lewy is.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, yeah, Lewy, we had a few chats about your trading habits at the pub and things like that, but there's a few questions I think later on about trading, so we might save that kind of chat for later on. But each week we give away a pack thanks to Game Day Squad, and I'm very organised tonight because I don't even have the wheel in front of me, but here we go. So each week we give away a Game Day Squad pack. There's a link in the description if you want to join up. Make sure your name's on there. We spin the wheel. If we read your team name out, then you win the pack. Just get in contact with me after the show. So spinning the wheel now, and good luck to everyone who has entered. But the winning team is the Debilitated. Yes, I might have gone early on that. I was right on the edge, but the Debilitated. Well done. So get in contact with me via the socials or via email, and we'll sort you out with a Game Day Squad pack. All right. Well, my team, boys, we talked about your team for a while. I haven't really mentioned my team too much this year on the podcast. It started a bit up and down, but currently sitting in second after the weekend, and top two. In our league, no team has ever... only one team in the 10 years it's been going has made the grand final outside of the top two. So generally, if you finish top two, you generally get a grand final berth. Now, our finals format has changed a little bit this year. We've gone from 4 weeks to 3 weeks, so it's a bit easier to make the grand final this time around. But things are looking good for the Hoofers. So, I do have Caldwell and Dawson on the Friday night, though, which was...
I saw that tweet, and you're like, who should I VC? Where did you go?
I went Caldwell in the end, and I think they pretty much finished on the same score. But Dawson started off way better, and then Caldwell was coming back like a house on fire, and then they both got knocked out within 5 minutes of each other. So that's classic fantasy gods coming to bite me there. But anyway, things are looking up for the Hoofers. In my Dynasty League, I finished 5th, probably the worst team out of the finals, and I just absolutely pumped the guy in 4th on the weekend as well. And the guy that finished 3rd, he's got his rucks Nank, who is out, and his other one is the only the two he's got Ned Moyle, but Witts might come back this week. He was listed as a test last week, and I think the only other one he's got on his list is one of the Essendon rucks. I can't remember which one it is.
Brian.
No. The one that's actually playing. So it's not Draper.
Goldie,
that's what it is, yeah. He's got Goldie on his list, so he could be rucking with Goldie this week. And Goldie could actually get dropped if they don't play 2 rucks as well. So, pretty interesting week for him.
That's almost like a reverse of your, with your ruck situation you had in
year.
finals.
Yeah, last year. Yeah,
and maybe you might be able to get him back.
Karma's coming back to look after me, maybe. But anyway, we'll get into the round review. And speaking of the Essendon ruck situation, the first one on my list here from the Friday night game is Sam Draper. 83 points. Are you guys happy with that, even with Goldstein in the side? What do you think, Lewy? What's your thoughts on Draper at the moment?
I'm not the biggest Draper fan, to be honest, but him scoring 83 alongside Goldie is perhaps a good sign. I'm not sure if he's one that sort of thrives with a little bit of extra assistance so we can get off the loose a little bit more. But
I think the main talking point is over the last 3 weeks, I think he's put up like 3 80-plus scores in a row now. 2 of them were without Goldie. And then this week he's come up with Goldie and still managed to actually put it up. So, it's really tricky to actually tell at the moment. Yeah,
he's a funny one. I sort of thought that he was going to break out, 2-3 years ago, really. And he's super hyped up for what he's dished out at this point. But they've clearly got chips in on him. They clearly see him as being sort of that next Essendon ruck to hold their midfield together. So if he's trending upwards, it's certainly a good sign.
I think the big thing is he's got the forward status at the moment. People wanting to play him as a forward and score those 80s each week. But I think just the positive sign is that he can still do that with Goldie in the side as well. Speaking of forwards, Ben Keys. What a turnaround in form. He's back to too good for the podcast, I think. Jordy, what's your take on this? What do you put it down to?
Yeah, I've got a couple of little things that I think it is. Like, obviously, Rankin is out last 2 weeks. So when I was watching, I saw Keys push up a bit more, and I saw him on the wing a couple of times there.
I think he had a couple of CBAs towards the end.
Yeah, and then obviously, Dawson going down. He actually had 6 CBAs all in the last quarter. And he had a 50-point last quarter as well. So
that's huge.
Which is massive.
He got him over the line pretty much.
Yeah, 5 goals. I mean, that's unreal. So I think there's a bit of a mix there of, pushing up a bit plus those CBAs. And, Dawson's out this week. Rankin's still got one more.
Yeah.
Laird got a bit of a knock as well. So in the last quarter, he didn't play half of the quarter. So I think there's a bit of a tick there. And I think he should be pretty good this week with those outs. It's just, going past that, when those boys come back, what happens there. So I think if you're a keeper owner, you're going to be pretty happy with that coming close to finals.
Yeah, 100%. I guess that kind of leads on to the next kind of point with the CBA mix at the Crows. Zach Taylor had 79 points. The most CBA, the 3 most used players at the centre bounce attendance were Berry, Taylor and Laird. I know Dawson missed quarter 4, the fourth quarter, so that does kind of change the numbers up a little bit. But what's your take on Taylor? Either of you got a thought, feeling or emotion?
He actually looks really good. Like, I was, he's been on this for ages, and I think he's 21 years old now, and he's only now played 4 games. I was a bit worried, when you have those guys on a list that have been there for ages and they don't get a game, but to break into that midfield, and actually looks like he's noticeable. You notice him in there. I think he's going to get a run at it the rest of the year, and especially with looking at the stats, Saligo was down a bit on CBAs, and I think they're just spreading the mix a bit more at the Crows, giving these kids a bit of a chance, and they've won the last 2 games as well. So
it's working.
Maybe it's working. So
100%. Yeah, interesting times ahead, because you've got players like Laird still in there, and I think Laird did something later in the game and dropped out a little bit, but it seems like they don't want to rely on Laird. Interesting time if you're a Matt Crouch owner still as well, and what's going to happen there in the future and stuff like that, because it does look like they're pushing through a few of these young kids, and they're actually showing some promise at the moment. So exciting time for the Crows, really, even though they're not playing finals, they're actually playing an exciting brand of footy that looks like it can beat top 8 sides. So yeah. The other one was Billy Dowling. I've noticed he's been playing more on a wing, or almost like a half-back role, but I'm pretty sure he's been starting on the wing a fair bit. Do we think we're going to see some inside time eventually, or is he going to be more of an outside type? What do you reckon, Lou?
Probably more of an outside type, at least to begin with. We've just talked about, blokes like Berry, Taylor, and some of those young guys coming through. They've had to bide their time for a long time.
True,
behind guys like Crouch and Laird and Dawson, and Keys, and the list sort of goes on there. So I think he's doing a little bit of an apprenticeship on that wing, and eventually he might sneak in there, get a couple of low sort of CBA games, and I suppose form from there is probably going to dictate where he sort of sits within that hierarchy. But I think for now he's going to be behind that young crew who, as we said earlier, looks like they're starting to get their run going there.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, if he was going to get some more inside time, and he did get a few CBAs and stuff a few weeks ago, they'd be doing it now while they're trialling all these younger players. But even like Huey Bond coming in, I know he's playing more of a tagging role and stuff like that. But it kind of just leads me to believe that maybe he's more of an outside type and may not have the ceiling we saw as the juniors and and what we saw in his first few games and the sample stuff especially. But that said, he's got the fantasy pedigree, so we can't really write him off at all either.
It might just be a case that they know that he can do that and they want to try him in some sort of different position at the AFL level.
Yeah, definitely. I guess Darcy Fogarty, more of a tip of the cap. But no, 96 points. Like, I think he is a viable loophole streamer. This year, especially with Crows having lots of Thursdays and Friday night games, he's actually been pretty handy for me to own. On those games where he does kick a bag or whatever. I think the Showdown was one of them, and that was on a Friday night, so that was pretty handy to own. And there's just been a few kind of instances like that. So especially with Walker out of the side as well, it's kind of proving that they can function without him too. So I liked his game. The other one was Riley Thilthorpe. I reckon the Discord was going off at quarter time about many people just having a few early crows about how good their waiver wire pickup of Riley Thilthorpe was after about quarter time and didn't get a lot of it afterwards. So Jordy, you've got a bit of a reminder about the key forwards in fantasy.
I do, yeah. I mean, I do like the thriller. Like, he looks scary as well. I think he's going to be great. But yeah, I think, like you said, key forward, you get those bursts, and I think he's, those people that did pick him up stay strong, because I think there's a game that he might pop maybe.
I will say, like, all pre-season, last 2 years, I've been saying Crows need to get Thilthorpe into the ruck because he's better than O'Brien, will be better around the ground. Looking at him returning now, I don't see a ruckman anymore. I see a monster powerhouse key forward. Yeah. So, I think maybe it's just the beard. He looks like a bit like Charlie Dixon or something like that. I don't know, but
he looks scary.
I do not see a ruckman anymore. I see an absolute powerhouse key forward in the making. So I think my tune has been changed on that one. Moving on to the GWS Gold Coast game. Full disclaimer, I didn't see any of the Saturday afternoon games. Was too busy parenting. But Jack Buckley had 94 points. Are we happy to just tip the cap to that one, boys? Nothing really to get excited about there. James Peatling, I reckon every time you come on the show, Jordy, James Peatling puts up a score, and I think it's always to do with Canelio being out. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. Like, even like there was weeks ago where like, Josh Kelly's out, like Peatling will be in, and he's still got drops. I think it's literally Canelio being out, and I think Canelio's a test this week actually. So
probably
one to watch there. Yeah, one straight out. So one to watch.
That happened last time. I remember there was a bunch of people in Classic considering bringing him in, and then he was just not named the following week.
Exactly.
Mega low break.
It's very hard, but if he's out, definitely I think you can be confident to put him on foot or at least stream him. But I think Cogs is back.
Toby Bedford is now officially too good for the podcast. Was he on the waiver wire in your league, Lou, or did someone have him on the pine sitting there and then he's jumped up with his tagging role? What's the go?
I wouldn't be able to tell you, mate, but Toby Bedford's been one that I've loved sort of streaming at certain times, even when he was playing that small forward role, because he was just like a bit of a bulldog, and you could rely on him for getting sort of 4 or 5 tackles and really boosting that floor up a bit in what's a pretty grim forward line. So he shows a bit, and now that he's tagging in that midfield, he's being able to get around the ball more often, as well as a couple of extra tackles there as well. So I really rate him as a player. I think he does a lot of special things.
Any forward playing a midfield role, you've got to have him inside. We saw Matt Kennedy earlier on, was started as midfield, but gain forward status. As long as they're around the footy, it makes it a lot easier to field those type of guys. So
someone in my other league, they dropped him because of the whole tribunal. He was out for 3 weeks, and there's only 3 weeks left of the season. So we'll drop in the waivers, and then another coach picked him up on the Thursday and put him straight on field for the 85. So
wow, that's just like a learning experience. You'd be kicking yourself, but you're a better coach because now you've done that. You won't be doing that ever again.
Just wait till the Thursday.
Absolutely. Now the next couple are pretty interesting. So Ned Moyle had 92 points. He's now too good for the podcast officially. Will we see the first 2G4P appointee to be dropped the next week. What do you think? What do you guys think is going to happen with the whole Witts Moyle situation? Just signed the big contract, killing
4 years, wasn't it?
Yeah. What do you think?
It's so hard, isn't it? Like, you think Witts will come back. He's a test this week, so you think he just comes straight back.
Do they play
still a
both?
Leadership. Yeah. Have they done that? Yeah, at this point of year? This point of the season? I don't know.
I don't think they've played two rucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've played like Ethan Reid and Witts together, but he can kind of play forward a bit better.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're pretty toll up forward, so I think it's going to be one or the other. It is interesting with that contract, though. They clearly rate Ned Moyle. I think he's been sort of chased for years by other clubs as well, and absolute VFL pig. I think he probably does get dropped. He's maybe a little bit unlucky for that. No, definitely unlucky. But on the other hand, I can see a world where maybe they tell Witts, hey, just rest up for a few more weeks. We're liking what Ned Moyle's doing. We're charging towards finals potentially, and I've got a few wins on the board with him in there. So
yeah, it's so interesting because like I don't think it really affects them either way who they play because they're both very good ruckmen. It's not going to affect the outcome of their game. So it's just a matter of do they want to nurture Moyle, keep him developing, or do they bring their leader in? Like I said, I don't think either of them actually affects the outcome of the game because they're probably just both as good as each other in there. So it's going to be really interesting to see.
Question without notice, is Witts signed for next year?
I don't know what his contract status is, but I assume he'd have one more on the deal because I think we'd be just hearing more news about it by now if that were the case. But one other thing on top of this, head to the website, go on the breakout tracker and look at Ned Moyle compared to other rucks after, 10 games or something, like 8 games or something like that. It is skyrocketing. Like, he is so far ahead of other rucks at that point of his career. So go have a look. He was a mid-season draftee though, wasn't he?
I don't think
was he
he was.
mature age or not?
No, I think he's just been around for a number of years.
Fair enough. Finally getting the call up. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. The other interesting one in this game was David Swallow. So 94 points. I think he's the inside guy now with Alex Davies. He copped 3 weeks suspension. Took Miller's out for 4 to 6. Do we just think David Swallow is now the new inside guy? What are your thoughts?
I think so. Like, I was looking at this, I was like, because Swallows had sub games and everything, but it literally correlates. Like, Took Miller's gone down. Davies went in for the 50% CBA. Davies is out. They need someone in there. Graham was the sub, Will Graham, and they sometimes be using him. So I think Swallow is that fourth banana, as they call it, until these guys come back.
So he's listed as a forward. Would he be someone you're snapping up off the waiver wire, Lou?
Yeah, I'd be interested. He's definitely a leader in that young midfield group, and I think that's probably why they've plugged him in the absence of those two players we just mentioned. So we know what you're going to get from David Swallow when he's got the role. More often than not, he's a pretty reliable player, and I'd be picking him up for sure.
What do you think happens in 3 weeks' time, or 2 weeks now, when Davies comes back and he's scoring well? Do you think they give the Davies experiment another go? Because I know there's a lot of coaches out there that were really keen on Davies after his VFL performances and then finally getting a crack last week and looking pretty good. What are your thoughts?
That's hard, and that would be in your finals as well, and I wouldn't want to risk like putting one of them on not knowing what they're going to do. Like, I think Davies obviously what Swallow's age now, 32 probably. Like,
he's getting on.
They probably do need to start putting in Davies and these other guys, and Graham was used there as well. I think they will start to use Davies hopefully, but if you're a keeper league, I think maybe Swallow could just be the next couple of week play to get you through.
Definitely in draft leagues, one to pick up and stream for the next 2 weeks for sure. On to the St Kilda West Coast game. Tim Membry had an absolute day out. 150 points, 5 goals, pretty much a career game. Now, usually this is the kind of guy I would tip the cap to, but people often forget that when he was kind of fit and firing a few years ago, he was a 70 averaging forward. He put up some monster scores for me in a year where I made a prelim. He was one of my better forwards. Any interest in Tim Membry from either of you guys?
I think so. I is this like last week he got 16 points and he's come out and got 154. Like,
that's fair.
A coach was talking to me on the weekend and they were like, I was almost going to pick Membry up because of the matchup, but I just couldn't because he had 16 points last week.
That's a
so
fair
it's
reason.
one of those, I think, like you said, history shows that he has been pretty good and his floor has been good. But hopefully we can see another one of these or a decent score, because I think he's done a couple of 30s and 40s leading up to that, this 150. So, again, maybe going back to that Fogarty thing, bit of a streamer looper if you can on the matchups.
definitely.
Yeah, my concern would be a lot of his history's not been under Ross Lyon. And he was probably a slightly different player back then. I think he's going to be very much in that sort of forward half, and you're not going to see St Kilda kick over 100 points every week or win by 70 plus. So I think the planets aligned there. I don't mind it as a bit of a streaming punt, but I wouldn't be getting my hopes up there.
Actually, when you think about this matchup, there's a lot of West Coast factor about the St Kilda scores and a lot of St Kilda factors about the West Coast scores. Like Zach Jones. Actually, Zach Jones I'm probably more keen on just because he seems to be the guy who stepped in with Philippou out. And so we've got, 4 weeks there. I don't know. Do you see anyone else being replaced in the midfield there, Lou, for St Kilda? Or do you reckon Zach Jones can put in a 4-week stretch where he scores okay in the midfield?
No, I think Zach Jones absolutely can. He's younger than what you think, and he was flying in the preseason, and then I don't think he got to round 1 just through a couple of injuries. So, Zach Jones is a pretty decent streamer more often than not.
And like the Saints have got, Winhager's is out as well for another 4 weeks, I think. Crouch can't get back with the knee. Paddy Dow was that sort of guy they're trying, but he just can't get in the side. Then they're trialling out other guys like Hunter Clark. So I think Jones is he's going to have a bit of that role for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree. There was a few kind of instances earlier on where they were rotating more guys through there, but looking at their CBA numbers over the last month, they've been so tight on the rotations. They've been playing like 4 guys consistently.
Seb Ross is also out as well, so there's like a heap of guys out. So
Jaden Hunt is the other guy. So 120 points, just kept finding the footy. He played more a halfback role, I think, in this game without seeing it, just the chatter I've heard around Twitter and stuff like that. And St Kilda are pretty fantasy friendly to these outside types. Any interest there from you guys?
Probably not moving forward. I think if I saw this matchup, I would have. I was actually looking at him or Brady Heff. I think we'll talk about him as well. But just with the matchup as a streamer. But I don't think moving forward, I think it's a bit of a St Kilda factor, as you said. Yeah,
maybe if he does it again, we'll start thinking twice about it.
Yeah.
But even right now with West Coast, it's so unpredictable with what's going to happen with what they trial over the next few weeks. Hey, on the West Coast, did you hear the news about Ken Hinkley maybe being West Coast's new coach there, Lewy?
Yeah, fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Did you see Louis' reply on Twitter?
I did. He drove to the airport.
Take him to the airport.
All right, on to the next one. Yeah, Brady Heff, you talked about 92 points. Again, some St Kilda factor there, but this is what we want to see from him. And he does look like he is the fantasy type when he's up and about. But I think this game might have just been like Duggan out. He plays that halfback role and plays it pretty well. So again, I'm not getting excited about either of those two just yet. Do it again next week and I might be. Ruben Jimby had 83 points, only the 9 CBAs, but kind of rolls into stoppages. Do you guys still have him as like a breakout contender, seeing though he was like an underage gun? Louis, what are your thoughts? Do you reckon 2025 could be a year for him?
Yeah, absolutely. He showed plenty in his first season, and understand that was off the back of a lot of tackling, but I think there were just some things he did that just really showed you a glimpse of the sort of player that he could become if you could start to find the footy a bit more. And that's what comes with young players. They're going to show you good things, they're going to show you bad things, but this is second year in the competition, so there's a lot of room for growth there. And just sort of separate to all that, I think West Coast players, you could do worse than take a few punts on these kids late. There's going to be a lot of opportunity there potentially. There's going to be some kids wanting to sort of show what they've got before the end of the season, and you might be able to find yourself with a guy who sort of skyrockets in value if we're talking a sort of trading game, or even potentially someone that you look to keep as maybe one of your last players just off the back of showing something late.
Yeah, I put out a list last week, or someone asked me about some buy low players for next year, and I didn't have him on there, but he's, you probably don't want to do it this week after he's put up a decent 80, but after he has a few weeks of lower scores, he's probably one that you could think about grabbing for next year, and hopefully he sees a rise in value. Other one in this game was Ryan Marich, 77 points, one of the mid-season draftees, just pushing up higher on the ground. I think he was playing on the wing a bit more in this game, so that was interesting to see as well.
Yeah, that's what I saw from what I saw. Or the first quarter, I was able to see. So
sweet, we're on the money there then. Hawthorn versus Collingwood. Me and Louis watched this at the pub over a few beers, a few reds, a few ciders, bit of everything. Yeah, real mix. But the big takeaway from this game, well, I don't know. I thought this one was kind of obvious, but I didn't hear a lot of chatter about it in terms of streamers and stuff this week. But Jack Ginnivan against his old club, Collingwood. I've got him on my list. I haven't really played Ginnivan all year, even though he has been averaging 70. My forward line's not too bad. But this was one game I was chucking him on the field for, and it panned out exactly how I expected. 122 points. Like, I just really want to pat myself on the back for playing him, really. but it was this season in general, though. He's been playing way further up the ground. He's kind of like him and Dylan Moore, kind of attack on opposite sides type thing from that forward line, push further up the ground. I just love the swagger of him as well. I know it really irks some people, but I love that in like younger AFL players these days. What are your thoughts?
You got to have entertainment in this game. You know, there's those guys that irk the supporters, but really, it's like you guys. I was a bit jealous of you guys being at the pub watching the game and all these antics, and I was out. And I mean, he's a showman, right? And that was awesome. Like, 122 points, like unreal.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll tip the cap to Connor Nash, 112 points. Play that kind of tough inside role and pops up with a few tackles a few good scores where he gets bulk tackles. But I think he's been this has probably been more his most inconsistent season in the last few, I think, and that's probably just a few other players coming up around him. My boy Massimo D'Ambrosi, I think we 2G4P'd him, but 111 points, 2 goals from the wing, just kept finding it. I just kind of wanted to make note that at Gather Round, I think it was the game that they played each other last, and Josh Dacos absolutely towed him up in that game, and in this game it kind of felt like the shoe was on the other foot a little bit. So just good to see a bit of redemption there for the Hawthorn players, I think, as well. Didn't see the slop that was Geelong versus Western Bulldogs.
That grounds, I couldn't believe. Did you see the grounds?
No, I did see the photos. I was watching the Ken Hinkley masterclass against the 18th team. Sander Koning from the Cats. I will mention that no Collingwood players were any good, so I just have skipped them all in this game. Sam De Koning in the other game, though, 31 hitouts. English actually won the hitouts with 41, which doesn't happen very often, but that's a pretty good hitout number for Sam De Koning in this game. He's kind of like 60 one week, 100 the other at the moment. Guess who he comes up against this week?
Saints, is it? No.
Nah, it's the Roos.
Oh, the Roos.
Tristan Cherry. I'm putting the C on Cherry this week.
He's not going to win too many hitouts.
Because I think he's going to absolutely monster him. But I still think Sam De Koning is someone you should be playing in your defence if you've got him, right?
100%. Like, he's beginning like a great pickup in on the waiver, and like even a 60 is not too bad of a floor score. So that's a great pickup. And the defence line isn't, sometimes you need a little bit of depth there. And I think, if it's a Geelong North game, you could even stream him because that'll be the early game, I think, on the Saturday. So
I think you're right, yeah.
But if he's doing that, like it's been a great pickup. Be interesting to see if he keeps that role. I think he'll keep that for the rest of the year, but like what they do moving forward.
The only issue here is Bruce Stanley's had a monster game in the VFL as well.
I saw they got 120 or something.
Yeah, so 47 hitouts there. So they might want to actually win some hitouts in the midfield as well. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But I feel like they've been rolling with this for a while now. And last week was the first week it kind of failed, really. Tim English is a good ruck. Maybe not a great tap ruckman, but around the ground he's pretty hard to work with. So, we'll wait and see what happens. But, the Reece Stanley factor is looming. I think Conway's injured his foot. They've put a screw in it or something, so he's not playing.
I think it's over for him.
He's done for the year.
Yeah, definitely. Sean Manor, again, didn't see this game, but 8 tackles in the forward line. It just feels to me, I haven't really watched him too much since he's come back in the side, but I feel like just mature body is pretty going to be pretty important. I said a few weeks ago, I think he's just going to be a pretty important player for their finals push, bringing in that mature body, not relying on the kids as much. So Sean Manor, 84 points. Like, I'm pretty sure he's snapped up on most waivers by now, but if he's still there, grab him. Speaking of waivers, Tanner Bruin came back through the VFL on the weekend. He might have been dropped in a few leagues.
He went massive, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a big game as well, so I could see him coming into the side as well. So just think about that one. Onto the Dogs, though. Rory Lobb, 99 points, averaging 80 in his last 5. Playing in defence, but Louis, do you think that's an option, or do you think it's more of a case of like you just got to pick and choose the games where he could pop? Or
look, he's a marking player, and that's what sort of gets us our fantasy points pretty efficiently. So playing in defence, I don't mind it at all. And with that forward status, it's as we said earlier in the podcast, it's hard not to pick these forward status players that are popping scores, and he's probably trying to get his trade value up a little bit too, old Rory Lobb. So
it's interesting because like I think earlier on in the season they're saying the Dogs need to get rid of 2.5 mil of their salary cap or something like that, that they're overpaying people like Caleb Daniel, Jack McRae, all that sort of stuff. Do you think they all go, or do you think Rory Lobb's kind of redeemed himself a little bit in this new role? What are your thoughts, Jordy?
That's hard because there's a lot of players, and like obviously Bailey Smith as well is another one that potentially they would be paying a lot of money to keep. And you've got McRae, I think, which we'll talk about. But I mean, I think maybe he has even redeemed himself. Like, I don't know, like he seems to be enjoying his footy. I follow him on TikTok, I think, and I see a lot of videos come up, and it just seems like maybe he has just turned the corner. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I think, or early in the year, it was Tom Morris saying he's 100% out the door. So, but I just don't know. They've got so much to work with the Dogs with these other guys. I think he potentially could stay now. It
feels right now, if you talk like those four that we named, about who's the most likely to stay next year, weirdly it feels like Rory Lobb is the guy. So if he's playing this role, like they don't really need him up forward, they need him down back a bit more. Interesting to see if they do get a few key defenders back and things like that, and what happens to him. But he's serviceable in fantasy right now, playing that role. Wouldn't rely on it each week, but luckily they do have a lot of Saturday afternoon games and things like that you can tend to stream him or loophole him on for. So, an interesting one there. And Sam Darcy, I think we've already 2G4P'd him, but back-to-back 90s as well. He's just big and strong up forward and then good around the ground when he goes into the ruck as well. Jamara Ugelhagen, we talked about him extensively last week. He's gone back-to-back good scores as well, but he's needing those goals to get there. So that's an interesting one. And I guess Jack McRae is the other one. He was the sub, and potentially I think he could even be out of the side this week. Do you think there's any value there in a trade? Because surely he's gone, right? Do you think there's a club that will pick him up, and is it worth throwing a bargain basement, trade out to get McRae in your team?
I think like he's signed for another 3 years. Like, he's an all-Australian midfielder. Like, I feel like he's got something in another club. And I think if he does go to another club, he's going to be fantasy relevant again for us next year with the forward status and in the classic world and all that. It changes so much. Like a few weeks ago, I thought he had that half forward role set in stone, and I thought, okay, he's actually in the best 22, and maybe out of all of them, he's going to stay because he's playing. He's actually the only one playing in the side. This is when Caleb Daniel and Lobb weren't in the side. And I thought, okay, maybe he will be the one to stay. But then Bevo comes out and he's the sub, which sort of seems out of nowhere, I guess. But obviously, the last few weeks hasn't been great. Yeah. And now if he's dropped, then you think he's definitely gone. So, what are your thoughts, Lewy? Like, it's just so hard to tell with McRae.
Yeah, if you can buy low, I'd be getting on it. I think he's potentially probably going to be requesting a trade. And as you said, he's got the fantasy pedigree. And if he's going to play midfield at another club, he'll have forward status next year. You might have yourself an F1 to an F3 sort of range for somebody that you're not going to pay a whole heap for.
I feel like McRae, it's all mindset with him. It's not the game's passed him by. Like, he's not too slow. I think there's a little tiny bit of that, given that he's 29, 30 now. But I think it's more about him just not having a real good time at the moment, constantly questioning his spot in the team and stuff like that. I think if he can get to another club where he's a bit more wanted and needed, I think he could bounce back next season. And I'm not saying he'll be the 110 average player that he used to be, but could easily be an 85 average forward for us next season if he gets to the right club.
Could see both brothers on the market.
Yeah, true that. Maybe play together somewhere. Yeah,
bit of a butcher situation, do you think?
Thank you to the following gold members: Todd Kempster, JC, Leo Chan, Brennan Hillier, James Monk, Dale Travers, Fraser Gehrig, Nigel Morris, Neil Turner, Hammer Smith, Lockie Pound, Stuart Reich, Matthew Pham, Braden Wren, and Steve Greenwood. We are a member-supported podcast, and essentially if there's no members signing up, this podcast ceases to exist. Actually had 2 new members sign up today, and I was saying last week, when people sign up towards the end of the year, they're actually supporting the podcast. It's not just to get the resources, it's not just to get their hands on the rankings or the breakout tracker or the draft mock draft simulator. It's actually to support the podcast. So very grateful for those members who have signed up mid-season just to ensure that the future of the podcast is safe. So thank you to those people as well. Let's continue on to the Richmond versus Port Adelaide game. Did you manage to stay awake through this one, Lou? Or
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a pretty boring game.
Yeah, well, it wasn't great.
Actually, I was pretty excited that Richmond might get over the line and we might see the end of Ken Hinkley, but wasn't to be. Jace Burgoyne, the first one though. 107 points. My question to you guys is, does it get better than this for Jace Burgoyne? And the reason why I ask is we see players like Miles Bergman who play on the wing. I know he does go back and do some jobs and stuff like that from time to time, but like wingers they do seem to just score hundreds one week, 60 the next type thing. Is this what Jace Burgoyne is, or has he got more to give? What do you guys think?
I think you're spot on there. I think he's going to have a week like this, good matchup. He's going to score 100, and then the next week he's going to go 50, 60, and I think he's going to improve, and he's going to, he's averaging 70 at the moment, so maybe he pushes that 80, 85 as a winger. Like you're seeing like guys like, Langdon and Dersma putting up these 80s from other teams
Akers
as a winger.
Been consistent.
Yeah, Akers is he'd be 85, 90, so maybe that's the ceiling of it.
Josh Akers last year too. Like their wingers do score.
Yeah. So that's probably the ceiling, but I think matchup is always the case with the wingers, unless he can go to half back, but he just seems to be in that wing position at the moment. And I'm in the same boat as you have. Like I think I've got him in a keeper, and I've just got too many mids where I don't think if he's mid only, I'm not going to be able to keep him.
Yeah.
He might just be one that I'd redraft again as a bit of depth.
Yeah.
I love him as a player, but I just it's hard to see, I guess the maximum is potentially that 85, 90.
It was so hard. Look, our trading deadline was last week, and he was someone I wanted to offload because, 100% agree that next year he's going to be a pretty useless mid only. But for this season, I've got like a 70, 75 average defender, which I'm playing as my D5 at the moment, and I couldn't get anything better in return, you know what I mean? It was such a tricky situation because being in flag contention, sitting second on the ladder, like I couldn't really take a lesser option for something better next year, you know what I mean? It was a real tricky spot. So, unfortunately I had to stick with it, but he might be going back to the draft pool in our league, which seems crazy given that he's a good young player who's having a breakout year. But anyway, you spoke about you like him on the halfback flank, but there's a guy that's probably stopping him from getting back anywhere close to that, and that's Logan Evans. Got a bit of a funny story about Logan Evans. So he scored 101 points on the weekend, and I had a feeling this was the case, but he actually went to the school I teach at. I never taught him, didn't do music, he's a PE kid, obviously. But I had 5 guys in the work group chat on Saturday night after the game all claiming that they're the reason why he's an AFL superstar. Now, even one English teacher in there saying he was the reason from some literature thing that they read with him. They also had 2 PE teachers claiming that they were the ones that moved him to the halfback flank in a school footy match, so that's where he discovered his true potential. But shout out to the boys if you are listening. What are your thoughts here? Logan Evans, are we seeing like a future star in the making? What do you think, Lou?
He's showing plenty. It's only a small sample size so far. I'm probably a little bit hesitant on him. I just haven't seen enough yet, but I mean, he's doing plenty, so he's headed in the right direction here.
You brought this to my attention maybe 2 or 3 years ago when we were talking about Port defenders. I think I was talking about Kane Farrell, and I was really excited about his future. And you basically put out the point under Ken Hinkley that he's really only ever had one defender in the side that scores well, and the rest are pretty mediocre, even though a lot of them do look like fantasy types. I look at Ryan Burton at Hawthorn, looked like he was going to be a fantasy gun, comes to Port, can't do anything, can't even get a game now. It's a bit tricky, and Dan Houston has been down a little bit as well, and I know there's lots of conversations in there, but I'm hoping that we don't really have to worry about this game plan too much longer anyway, but that's just one thing to actually consider there. The other couple players, I'll just tip the cap to Charlie Dixon with 4 goals, but I think he's walking around town with his chest puffed out this week, but let's just remember he did it against the bottom team.
He won't score 50 points this
on the
week.
ladder. The other one's Jordan Sweet, who I think is probably too good for the podcast now, but purely because he's not the best ruck in the world, but like if you're in a 12-team league and he's one of the top 12 rucks probably in the competition in terms of fantasy scoring, so he's probably at that point now where he's going to be picked up in most teams, so we don't really need to talk about him. Miss Georgiades, though, he's on a bit of a run, so he's on the bubble, missed a game with suspension. Jordy, what do you think? Can he be one of those fantasy key forwards like a Charlie Curnow or something like that? Not in terms of superstar talent, but just in terms of fantasy scoring, or is he just too dependent on goals?
That's hard. I think he's looking good. He's taking steps forward, which is great and is exciting. We actually look like a better side with him in it, which is great. I don't know whether I can see him being because what did Curnow kick? 60, 70 goals last year?
Yeah, that's a lot of goals. You're right.
That's a lot of goals. for Georgiades. I mean, I think he's going to improve, which is going to be great. But to be like Kerno averaged 90, I think, last year or close to it.
What's he averaging this year, like 80 odd?
77, I think.
Yeah.
So he's taken a bit of a back step.
I meant more so that scoring than last year's scoring.
Yeah.
But
definitely then. I mean, I think he's definitely going to improve. Whether I think 75, 80, do you think he could potentially push that?
I was thinking, somewhere probably in the 70 to 80 range type thing there. But he's definitely got that capability because he's that little bit more athletic as well, can work up the ground a little bit, but has a pretty good leap on him, pretty good grab. And set shot had been something, that was a little off about him, but he's been putting them through the last few weeks. So, yeah.
He looks like he's going to be our number one man pretty much, like, moving forward. Like, he's moving really well. So, I'm liking it.
Absolutely. And one for the Tigers, Nathan Broad had 87 points, probably just a tip of the cap, but a bit of more of a gritty defender, and the conditions probably suited him. A few tackles, a few things went his way there. On to the Sunday games, Brisbane versus the Sydney Swans. Cam Rayner. I feel like every 2 or 3 weeks we have a Cam Rayner discussion, but do you guys just feel like something has changed about him recently? Like, he just looks so much more dominant in those games, coming against the top team in the competition, and it's probably starting this game. Can we start to think about Cam Rayner?
He just teases Rayner, and I need to see a few of these in a row, I think, before I'm on him. But is he playing more mid-time, or is it's just one of those games where...
Same role, because he's still like monsters, like a pack in the forward line, and he comes through and kicks a goal type thing, and
and he's still only averaging, I think, 66 or something. So you just want to see that next step, but he just does this in batches, and I still can't fully trust him, even though he is looking different.
I've drafted him like so many seasons, thinking like this is going to be finally the year, and like even this year, like it's still so up and down. I think it's just we're seeing more of a ceiling coming through.
Yeah,
but this consistency remains the same.
Yeah, which you'd rather, right? You'd rather him pop at 100 every now and again, and then what do you think, Lewy? It sounds like, got some thoughts on him.
I think Zach Bailey's a better player, and Zach Bailey's never really lit the world on fire in terms of averages either, has he? He was one that was a little bit like Cam Rayner a few years ago, where we thought, okay, this guy might be the next one to come through.
Essentially at Brisbane, if you're not in there starting 3-4 midfielders at every centre bounce, you're not going to be a fantasy scorer, really, unless you're Dane Zorko, really. We're not going to be a consistent one anyway. You'll pop every now and then, but it's pretty hard to score unless you're in that midfield or you're just floating around halfback, getting all the cheap touches. All right, Robbie Fox. Do you guys remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, he became like a mid-season trade-in and everyone was on top of it. Well, the reason for that, he was playing in defence and he was kind of like a quasi-key forward role. I think it was 2021 because he ended up playing in the grand final, I think I remember. 111 points the weekend. He's been playing forward this season because he's actually listed as a defender forward now. But back in defence this week. What are your thoughts? Can we start thinking about Robbie Fox again?
I mean, why not? Like, get him off just give it Swans have got a few injuries now.
Yeah.
And if he's gone back there, and you need a defender, everyone has different leagues with the waivers, but I mean, I know our league is pretty dire, so it'd be someone I'll just put one in for. And he's, like you said, he's done it before, so I don't mind it.
Yeah, he's definitely gone on a stretch before. Like, he seems to revert to type eventually, but can do it if he's given the right role, which it seems like he had on the weekend. So wait and see what happens there. And then we'll tip the cap to Will Hayward, kicked 2 goals, 84 points, but nothing super special there to write home about. On to the Fremantle-Melbourne game, and what a pacing this was from a midfield perspective. But we won't get into that just yet. We'll talk about one of the key forwards, and that's Josh Tracy. 112 points. Now, he's another one. Like, there's a few key forwards that just are serviceable fantasy scorers. I think this guy's another one. Like, 4 goals. He's just such an imposing figure up forward, like a big dude. What's his nickname? They call him something.
Cyclone.
That's right. Oh, no, they got another one for the Big Kahuna.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, the Big Kahuna. He's averaging 77 points now as well. So I don't know many leagues that wouldn't be fielding forwards that's averaging 77.
He's been good. And his floor's been pretty good as well all year. Like, I mean, this is what Freo have been after, this sort of key forward. He's kicked like 50 goals as well, which is unreal. He got for cheap from Gold Coast as well as a cheap pick. So it's come along well for Freo.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's had an absolute superstar season, and it's more like little players like them are probably the reason why they've turned their season or turned their form around from last year and right back in the top 4 conversation. But yeah, loving what I'm seeing, and yeah, like you're not passing up a forward that averages 77 regardless of what type of forward they are, and I think that's continuing over the next final few rounds of the season as well. Jago Mira was one last week I noted at a possible M7 option if you're battling, because he would probably make mine right now, given I'm playing James Warple in that position at the moment. But yeah, got on the wing a bit more these days. But yeah, really just again pat myself on the back for that suggestion. Well done, me.
Well done, Heff.
Tip for the cap to Michael Walters, 4 goals, 83 points. Onto the Melbourne side of things. Jacob Van Rooyen, 91 points, had that ruck forward role. What do you think happens when Gawn comes back next week, Lou? Because I guess Petty and him were sharing the ruck, and the reason why he's been putting up some good scores is, well, he was kind of doing it before. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the whole Van Rooyen? Is he a viable option in your forward lines?
I think he could be. Max Gawn's clearly a little bit beaten up, so I'm not seeing sort of 90% ruck time potentially to finish the home and away season.
Do you think he's 100% returning this week, given how smashed they got on the weekend, though?
I'm not sure. That's going to be up to the doctors and the fitness staff. But previously, Van Rooyen, he was chopping out ruck and he looks the goods. He's clearly going to be a very, very special player. And I think Max Gawn comes in. They probably rest him a little bit in game.
Yeah.
They want him to get kilometres into the legs. They want him to find a bit of form, but I just can't see that being 90% sort of ruck contests. So I think Jacob Van Rooyen will step up a little bit there, and that might result in your sort of 75 plus scoring, which will be perfect for your forward line.
You do make a good point, because I do think Gawn will probably be rested a little bit more. Who do you think takes the backup role? Because I don't think Petty goes out of the side either, because he's pretty handy going in there. Do you reckon they rotate all 3 of them through there? Or do you think Van Rooyen potentially is the more dangerous forward and they put Petty through the ruck and he's the one who could see more of a scoring bump? What do you think, Jordy?
They've got a bit of an issue, I think. Like with their depth, like they obviously brought Fullerton in and they're not playing him. I think this is what they're going with, is this 3-prong attack: Petty, Gawn and Van Rooyen, which I think, Van Rooyen is probably better forward for them structurally, but I think for this year they're going to have to do it because they're obviously not playing Fullerton. He mustn't be ready. And I think the other ruck that they've got is quite young and he needs quite a lot of time. So whether they try and recruit someone, it's funny how they had Jackson and Grundy and now they're really struggling without that second ruck.
Yeah. But in terms of the context of this game, do you think Petty stays in the side and continues a backup ruck role, or do you think he goes out and they just go back to Gawn and Van Rooyen?
I think it's just Gawn and Van Rooyen.
Yeah, it's interesting. They did re-sign Petty today. Another 2 years,
wasn't it?
2 years, yeah. So I don't know. It'd be strange to push him out the side after that, I think, as well. But
obviously,
yeah. It's just hard to predict whether that's going to affect Van Rooyen in this game. To be honest, 91 points that came from kicking a few goals as well and taking a few marks up forward too. So I wouldn't say. I think he only had Melbourne only had 9 hit-outs for the whole day. So it's not like he was getting heaps of scores through that. As more just that he was around the footy a little bit more as well. Anyway, Jack Billings, I don't know if there's anything to write home about, but 75 points off 41% game time. Just one to monitor, given how awful Melbourne were. He could come back into the side and start the game this week. The big player, the player at the moment from Melbourne that I'm starting to get excited about is Judd McVie. So 71 points. It was probably better in the last few weeks because Rivers was kind of playing in the midfield a lot more, and I felt like he was probably the guy to pick up the halfback slack. Now, Rivers didn't have as many CBAs this week, and they opted they went back to the Sparrow and the Salem this week, which is annoying, but it's just what Melbourne have been doing all year. Salem, I think, did a hamstring at some stage. Yeah, so we could see. Anyway, I just think for the future, Judd McVie looks like that halfback type, decent distributor, and could be an option in future seasons. What do you guys think?
Definitely. I think you're on the money there. I'll be... whether he's a keeper or not, like depending on some of the lists, how long the lists are and your keepers. But I think he's, taking the next step forward this year, which has been good. So
would he be one you target next year, Lou, in a draft?
Probably not. I'd probably see him more of like a Dane Rampy, where defensively he's A1 as well. And I'm not sure that it's too difficult to find people that can use the ball off half back, whereas it's a lot more difficult to find blokes that can defend really well.
That's people like Wilmot's issues as well. They could play that halfback role so well. But yeah, it did look like Rivers stepping up. I think the big factor is going to be what happens with players like Clayton Oliver at the end of the year. Probably Petrarca a little bit as well, like what his health's like as well. If they're down 2 midfielders, then you'd think Rivers goes back into that midfield full time, and then moves. It opens a bit of a hole for Judd McPhee.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the Carlton versus North Melbourne game. Nothing to really talk about here. Matthew Cottrell, tip of the cap to him, 93 points, and Paul Curtis kicked 3 goals and 82 points there. So we'll move on to the questions in a second. But thanks to the other lot of gold members. I'm getting pretty close to the bottom of the list now here. But thank you to MP, Matt Petit, Sam Newman, not a footy show spelt differently. Scott Ramadan, Joel Proctor, Brendan Davis, Tom Dickman, Ryan Robertson, Mitchell Swan, Stephen Surfles, Benjo McSwain, Jared Dane, Jake Ashenden, Andrew Kieran, and Michael Ford. There's a lot of names that have been around for probably the full 6 years of doing the podcast, whether it be back in the Patreon days or once we got the website up and running. So thank you to those gold members. It means a lot that people have stuck around and supported the show for that long. But let's get into the questions. There's a few here. So Ninja Spoon's asking, he plays in a 12 he keeps 12 in his league. He wants to know, is Doherty a keeper in a 12-man keeper league? He's in the premiership window, but it's closing very soon. What are your thoughts? Apparently Doherty's going to come back finals. That's the go.
I saw that actually. That's positive signs, actually. I was looking at this, I was thinking, is it, it depends on the list, but if he is in the window, depending on his list, maybe he is a keeper. But I mean, I'll be watching his pre-season and making sure his health's all good.
Yeah. I'd be watching the final. If he plays finals, watch him, and then I'm hoping you don't have to lock him in at the end of this year, because that seems silly. We lock ours in a week before the season starts, type thing. So if you're doing it now, have a good hard look at your league. Talk to your commissioner, because that's silly. Hopefully you get the finals to actually take a look at him, and then if he's actually looking like he could be remaining as a 80, 90, 100 plus average kind of guy, then you keep him. If not, put him back, and then maybe just try to pick him up in the draft again if you can. Liam, AFLW Fantasy, wants to know, if Ken Hinkley leaves Port for West Coast, will Lewy also switch his allegiances? Because you're such a big Ken Hinkley fan, Lou.
No, absolutely not.
Was not happy with that one. He wants to know, Brady Hoff, is he an 80 averaging defender next year? What are your thoughts, Lou?
Yeah, I think he's got the potential to be if he gets the role. I like Brady Hoff, and he's shown plenty in his short career so far.
It's more like the Duggan factor, but then we saw Shannon Hearn in the past. He scored fine across there, even with it when he was getting a game. There's enough points. It all depends on the coach though, and what kind of game plan. Bit of talk that Ken Hinkley could be going there, and your one defender theory at West Coast. So yeah, is there room for enough of them under a Ken Hinkley game plan? Please make that happen. Whoever's in charge of that. At Diddley Docker wants to know, would you rather hold on to John Noble or Dan Rioli for 2025, Jordy?
100% Dan Rioli,
especially after the weekend,
and he could go to Gold Coast as well. Don't know what that means, but
a lot of halfback flankers at the Gold Coast though.
Yeah, but still, Dan Rioli over Noble, I'll be taking that in a heartbeat.
Yep. At least with Dan Rioli, he's best 22 wherever he goes.
Exactly.
Noble could be anything. Quan Direction wants to know, I picked up Sanders with the second pick of the keeper draft. Beverhurst told him he needs to keep playing with his socks up until he can prove he can play at AFL level. Have I made the right choice picking Sanders at pick 2, or should I trade him to make a play for Levi Ashcroft? Any thought of the overall strategy on giving up on a first round draft pick?
Kwani's in my league.
Okay.
Lou and I were talking about this before. I think Sanders, we're looking at the Dogs midfield. Chalor and Libra getting on. They're probably a couple of years there, and I think Sanders will actually get that time in a couple of years. He's got the forward status at the moment, so for the next couple of years, he could have that forward status, is fieldable. And there's nothing to say that Levi Ashcroft isn't going to be behind. He's, going to be behind Neil Dunkley. Yeah. The other Ashcroft, McCluggage, he's probably in the same boat as Sanders. Sanders is probably in a better boat, to be honest. I know obviously there's the Bevo factor, but I would be keeping Sanders with pick 2. What do you think, Louis?
Nah, spot on. I just don't know. Like, are you just going to keep kicking that can down the road?
100%.
What happens if Levi Ashcroft is in a similar boat? You know, you're looking to trade him then and move on to the next one. You're just going to be rotating young kids. Give him some time. He's played, less than 10 games probably. And he was an absolute pig in his junior level. And he's shown plenty at AFL level as well. He's going to have forward status. I'd be hanging on to him for dear life, really.
Another thing is he won the Lark medal. And if you look at all the Lark medalists, they're all guns, like Petrarca, Josh Kelly, I think. Like, all of them have got pretty good track record.
Yeah.
So he's got the pedigree. Like, I'd just be backing him in.
Was Lockie Cowan a Lark medalist?
Maybe.
I reckon he might have been. He's one.
Maybe he's your next boy.
Yeah, maybe.
That disproves it then.
Anyway, no, I 100% agree. The only way I think about doing is if you could get Ashcroft or a high pick next year and something else, maybe you'd think about that. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be doing a straight swap scenario or, the equivalent of just to make a play for a guy. You've got 1 year of development into Sanders. As soon as you get to 3 or 4, that's when they start to flourish. Just got to wait till that time, really. And if you make the trade now, you just put yourself back another year. Ninja Lou Reef wants to know thoughts on Schoenmaker and Hobbs as keepers next year. If you owned any of those, Lou, what would you be doing?
I'd keep Hobbs.
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen for Hobbs eventually. He's just caught behind a few in that Essendon midfield, but I think he shows plenty when he does get that opportunity. And as we keep sort of going back to their junior scoring, but we know Hobbs was pretty good there as well.
Yep. So Schoenmaker.
Yeah, this is one where I'm not sure if it'll be as consistent. I'm not sure if the role is necessarily going to remain there. He sort of reminds me of maybe like a Dylan Williams from last year. It might have been the year before where... and I was getting questions about it too. This Dylan Williams guy, he's coming out, he's going 80, 85, and then he lost the role, and now he's lost the consistency, and I'm just not sure where he sits. And I sort of see Ira Schoenmaker in that sort of mould as well, especially given that there's quite a few of that type of player at the Saints with a Sinclair, a Wanganeen Malira. Bonner's been a bit of a revelation, and I'm sure there's probably a couple others I'm forgetting. So I'd probably, if you had a bit of a lighter list, maybe you'd look at it. But I think he's one that you could probably redraft pretty comfortably if you were keen on him.
I think so too. He's going to be available, I think, in drafts, especially if you play 12 keepers. I think you guys play 12 keepers as well. Yeah, same as us. Unless he's on a rookie list or some way like kind of loophole to keep him, he'll be back there next year. Schoenmaker, though, I do think a lot of it is between the years for the guy, though, and that's not always the easiest thing to teach someone. Like some people, a lot of young players come in being the ultimate professionals, have the footy brain on them and really have to develop, their bodies and skill sets and stuff like that. I think with Schoenmaker, the things I've heard is his professionalism can be questioned at time, but that can be taught by someone like Ross Lyon as well. But it's also just having the footy brain, which they seem to think he doesn't really possess at the moment. Again, it's how well he can kind of learn the game and that sort of stuff. He looked okay in the first few games that he played, so I do have some faith, but it's not worth kind of selling the farm to keep him at this point in time, that's all. Matt Roach, what do you see Geelong's ruck setup looking like next year? Are we all on the Conway train?
Has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon just Conway one out, really, and then it should be, and then maybe DeConing helping out from there. I think that's the ideal scenario for him.
Because who's the other ruck that... I mean, they've got Stanley. Have they got anyone else on the list, Geelong?
Not that comes to mind. I'm pretty sure there is one. It's like Joe Furphy.
Okay,
is that the guy I'm thinking of?
Yeah, probably.
But that's another one.
Yeah, so maybe SDK is just that backup.
Yeah.
Next year if there's an injury and that.
I think so. Richard Eliadis wants to know, and this is an interesting question. In a keeper league, if there are minimal trades, should the restricted free agency be opened up to make more movement? Our league has had clear winners, had a clear winner for months, and a trade stalemate just seems to be draining the fun for the league. Thoughts? Now, I got some pretty strong thoughts on this. Like, for me, trading doesn't make the league fun. Like, I don't think trading automatically equates making the league fun because, and I know it depends on league to league, but in our league, trading generally sews up the grand final or the premiership winner about 6 weeks before the season ends, because what happens is the teams that have checked out for the year, they start to get rid of all their old players for younger players. And, you know, for example, in our league just this week, I saw Treloar get traded to the top team for the equivalent of a round 13 pick.
Round 13.
So the equivalent is, like, in our league, we keep 12. So it was around 14. We keep 12, and he got traded out for a second rounder. But in that stage, you're not getting any of the good young kid draftees because they all go on the first. What happens is the bottom 6 teams take all the draftees, and then the top 6 teams that are going for the flag will take, like, established players. You know what I mean? But this time last year, I think the players that were left in the... I think I got Cherry in the first round, so that was a pretty good one. But there were blokes like Will Setterfield, James Warple. They're the kind of guys getting picked up in this range. And that's just what we saw happen. And now it's kind of like... He's still definitely beatable, the guy at the top of our league, that's for sure. Like, and anyone can beat anyone in their day. I wholly agree with that. But, yeah, you just kind of feel as like the season's kind of over a bit now, or it's at least down to 2 teams, or 1 or 2 teams, or 2 or 3 teams type thing. Yeah, and so for me, trading isn't the be-all and end-all. Like, and I think people want it to be, like... The reason why we see trades happen in AFL is because there's, I would say, like, outside circumstances, really. Like, you've got someone who wants to go home, someone wants more money, a team
role
can't
change,
fit
or
role change. Team can't fit in the cap. That doesn't happen in fantasy. And then the issue is that no one wants to take an L in a trade. But if you're going to get a trade done, there has to be a loser in some way, whether it's short term, long term, or whatever. Someone's going to have to lose initially and then make it up, and hopefully make it up later. So, I don't know. It's a tricky thing for me. What do you guys think in terms of more trading? And should they be opening up free agency to make more movement, or what's the go?
I think if you set the rules at the start of the year that you're not doing waivers or RFA or whatever, that's the rules for the year. You can't just decide to open the RFA just because there's not enough trades.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that to me seems unfair, because the teams that have actually drafted well or done well, and then you're opening the waiver, that just seems like a bit of a loophole.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe... Yeah, I personally think that, that's a bit unfair, I think, for those top coaches.
Yeah.
And, maybe he just, I don't know, this just got to get a bit better trading, or he's obviously not happy with how he's going, maybe. So, I don't know.
The fun for me lies in the drafting. Like, showing that you've done the research at the start of the year to pick the quality players. Like, my team this year was probably middle of the road in terms of my keepers, but I've been lucky, just picked a few good players that have kind of propelled my team up there, and that's where I think the skill is, not so much in the swindling of the trades. I think, like, trading's in our league, like, all it ever seems to be is there's one guy who's bored with their players and just flipping players off, and it ends up creating like a powerhouse monster team. Fingers getting pointed at Lewy right now. It ends up building like a monster. Like, we had a guy in our league that's won 6 flags over the last 5 years or something like that, and it's all been through just one or two coaches just getting bored with their team. I'd rather have Callum Mills for a bit instead of Bontempelli, 4 years ago type thing. And then, that sort of shit. And then Bontempelli breaks out, or, and I know you can't predict the future and stuff like that, but there's definitely teams in our league that if they would have sat on their teams instead of just getting bored and trading, they probably would have won a flag by now. And now they're dwindling down the bottom of the ladder. You know what I mean? So,
thoughts, Lewy?
I thought Heff nailed it with his thoughts right there. It comes from a fun aspect for me. So I like to not lose trades intentionally, but I'm happy to, like you said, drafting is the most fun, where you can sort of back your footy knowledge to find some of the better players for your future. And that's sort of what I like to do with my trading. I like to, it might be a Tom Stewart who potentially is coming towards the end. There's someone towards the top, and they might have a draftee or someone who's a couple of years into the system that I think has the potential there. That's why I love throwing out trades early on in the season too, where a couple of players overachieve, some underachieve, and you can sort of swindle the system a little bit there. But I don't think necessarily opening that up is going to create more fun or make anything more interesting.
Yeah, kind of going off topic here, but this is a thought I've had in our league in terms of trading. When a trade gets done behind the scenes, like, I don't know how yours were, but most of ours are done on WhatsApp or whatever, or emails or whatever, you chat to each other. Do you think once a deal is done, it should be announced before it's accepted? So this is my thinking, like, knowing that trade went down for Treloar, like, there would have been coaches in our league that would have offered up so much better. like in terms of offers. It's just more the fact that no one thought he would be stupid enough to actually accept a second round pick for Treloar. Like if I knew that was happening, I would have offered up a higher second round pick because like it would have been a no brainer for me. But I gave the coach too much credit, thinking there's no way he would accept a trade like that.
That's hard, isn't it?
You know what I mean? Like is that a
well, on the app you can offer a player up, can't you?
Yeah,
Is
but
that
it's
what you
more
do?
so
It's
like
just- I know what you mean about
Yeah, I don't know. Like I guess like my I've kind of lent on that. You know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not that I'm like too salty about it because like I didn't make the offer. Good on him. He did it. You know, he was bold enough to suggest it. It just seems strange that, you know, you've got such a gun player who scored 150 on the weekend just given to the top team essentially for free. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I sort of sit with you miss every shot that you don't take.
Yeah.
And the onus also is on the other player as well because they can go and make that public. They can say, look, this guy is on the trade table. They don't have to necessarily say, oh, it's for a 13th pick.
Yeah.
But they can say, look, he's there, send me some offers. We do that in our league all the
It's
time.
just more so that none of that happens. Just all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, Treloar's been offloaded for, you know, a packet of chips. And everyone's just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
Does your league have to approve it? Like, is there a commissioner that is, or if those two parties are happy?
No,
then
ours
you
we definitely don't have a veto system. It's just
Yeah.
once the deal was done, the deal was done. We've
Yeah.
never overturned a deal ever in our league, and that's what I like about our league. There's kind of like that integrity there.
Yeah.
But then sometimes you think like, what was going on behind the scenes as well. But anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there. We're getting too deep for we can talk about trade philosophy for hours. Let's wrap it up. Where can people find you boys on the X sphere? Is that what we call it these days? Twitter
I
sphere?
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at AF Lewy.
You still tweeting? Just more Ken Hinkley hate, is that right?
Yeah, I sporadically fire one out.
Yeah.
Generally, it's after a couple of cans or something like that.
Few
And
heads. Jordy.
Just Jordan D'Sena. Just on there or Spotify as well. Jordan D'Sena as well. I've actually been recording a new song, so
Cool.
hopefully get it out end of the year. Which should be
we'll
cool.
Definitely share that on the socials there. Our listeners will be pretty keen to check that one out. I actually made an update to footy numbers
sick.
During the holidays, which has been a pretty cool one, I think. So over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've just been tracking answers, not storing any other personal information or anything like that, just answers to work out which are the ones that people get right all the time and which ones people get wrong all the time. And that now dictates the difficulty modes, not the 150 games played, 75 games
sick.
played. So it means there's just a lot more people in the easy mode as well. You can actually get streaks of 100 plus and easy and stuff like that without running out of players and things like that. So have a go at the new footy numbers. I think easy and medium are new, and then hard and expert stay the same. But yeah, anyway, go have a look at it. It's good fun. I've got some content coming out around that as well. And then get around us on @KeepLeaguePod on all the social media platforms. Make sure you sign up as a member. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you, boys, for joining me on this Monday evening.
No worries. It's good to chat. Good to be all three of us.
We'll have to
Fun.
get the trio on again. I think it's good fun getting everyone in the room.
I like it.
No, thanks for having us.
No worries. Take it easy.